4 months ago, I got sent to 5 different countries with this drone on a mission to test the machine's limits as I captured shots from around the world for the Antigravity A1 announcement. Braving the elements with this unit, I learned so much. So when the Antigravity A1 first got announced, I made a previous video talking about my first impressions of the drone. So today we're going to look at how it's changed over these past months of improvements, and what this means for the future of flight. This is the Antigravity A1 8K 360 Drone Infinity Bundle. It comes with a very well-designed sling bag that comes with a drone, goggles, motion controller, carry case, charging hub, sling bag, high-capacity flight batteries, goggles battery, power cable for the goggles, lens caps for the goggles, 8 extra propellers, screwdriver to change the propellers, a pretty cool SD card quick reader that they included with this bundle, and of course the manuals, which we all read, of course. Let's start with taking a look at the drone itself. Coming in this nice felt packaging, you just pop the lid open like this, and there it is. I haven't seen this thing since the pre-launch unit I was using, and it's like seeing an old friend after all that we've been through. So the drone form factor is quite similar and familiar. If you've ever seen a mini drone unit, then you're gonna be familiar with this kind of design. It's very small, it's very light, under 250 grams. The 2 lenses that you will be seeing and recording out of are these top and bottom lenses, which I am very happy to inform you are replaceable. Yes, that is freaking amazing. With this bundle, Antigravity sent me a lens replacement kit that I actually had to use because of a crash, and it wasn't that hard to change the lenses out. The fact that I could even do it at all without having to send it in, wait a couple weeks, and maybe not even get my drone back, considering what's happening in the US, is a godsend. And because you've got one nice big lens on the bottom, there are these really nice landing guards that Antigravity has built to deploy and retract whenever you land and take off. And honestly, it's a pretty cool just little mechanical feature I love watching whenever it happens. In the space where a lens might more commonly be put, the Antigravity has this nice fill light, which usually flashes in the color of the flight mode it's taking, as well as a really nice bottom auxiliary light, which can light up at night whenever you're trying to land. Along with the 2 front-facing obstacle avoidance sensors, there are 2 downward ones as well. You turn on the drone by double tapping and holding, just like a DJI drone. And there they are. There is the landing gear. Love seeing that. And there is your high capacity flight battery that shows you the battery whenever you tap it. It slides in just like that, and you're ready to go. On top of that, the Antigravity comes in at 249 grams, which flies right under the registration requirement for most countries. The drone itself looks cool, but the revolutionary part I think we're waiting for is how it actually performs with its camera and flight features, which we're gonna get to in a second. Here is the Antigravity A1 motion controller, which looks pretty identical to how it was when I had it last. Has a lot of different buttons, each with their own function. One for yawing, this for braking, for vertical takeoff and vertical landing, record, camera shutter, menu button, power button, trigger to make the drone fly forward or in the direction you want it to. And then you've also got 2 custom buttons here for different smart flight modes we'll get into more, as well as this side toggle for different flight modes. We'll get more into how this drone actually flies with the controller in a second. And then finally, of course, the goggles. With this fancy new animation, which didn't used to be here when I was testing it out. Look at that thing. You can even change it up. And when you are flying, this becomes a viewfinder and monitor that people can watch where you're looking while you are piloting. The goggles are equipped with 2 movable lenses, micro OLED lenses that can move to best position your eyes to the goggles. It will actually let you change your prescription level so that the image is sharper in your eyesight without having to actually wear glasses. Now, the coolest update that I've experienced with these goggles since last using them is that now they have onboard screen recording, so I can now record what I'm seeing in the goggles exactly and share it with you in this video. I don't know if they had it when I was using it last time. It was all in Chinese. My Chinese is like the level of a 2-3-year-old, so maybe I just didn't know it was there, but it's here now. It's freaking sick. And this is the other thing I honestly didn't even realize that the goggles were gonna have. Check this out. Double click. Look at this. So the DJI Goggles 3 has a pass-through mode. It's cool. You can see out of the lenses on the front, but for some reason the focal length of the Goggles 3 is like 40 millimeters. So it's like super tight in. So if you're comparing it with what I'm seeing now, the frame would look like this. So whenever I looked around, I was like, why am I looking through a 40mm lens camera? I can't see my hands, I can't see anything. The anti-gravity goggles, although it's black and white, has a wide angle lens at the front. And I can see very clearly in front of me in see-through mode. You can see my somewhat dirty room. Sorry, I pushed everything aside so I could film this as soon as possible. And this clarity, although it's black and white, is great. Like, it's between the quality of the Meta Quest 2 and the Meta Quest 3, if you ever use those. So now if I ever need to see in front of me without taking off the goggles, I can just double tap the side button here, and I can switch. And you can see around me. It's excellent. Hey, good looking logo, good looking drone. So really happy with how the final goggles are looking. And the fact that you can actually still see what I'm seeing in the lens here is really, really cool. If you get the Antigravity A1 Infinity combo, it also comes with this really neat, well-fitting battery charging case. This charging case is very well designed in my opinion, because not only does it hold these 2 batteries in its default mode, but when you want to charge up to 3 batteries, there's this little button at the bottom. You press it, it opens up a 3rd charging slot. You can slide your battery in. There's a little power button on the side, you press it, and this little screen pops up and tells you the battery status in exact numbers of each battery inside the case. And when you're ready to go, you want to just take the battery in the case with you. You just take out the battery, you close it back up, and then it becomes slim again. Fits perfectly right back into the sling bag, just like that. Now that we've covered everything that it comes with, what is this drone actually capable of performance-wise? What kind of footage can you get from it, and what are the best use cases for this drone actually? Let's start with talking about the drone's performance. Not only is it capturing in 360, this has already existed with different modifications where people can attach 360 cameras to a drone and fly it around. However, in order to fly the drone, you were still flying it like a conventional drone, whether it was using a screen and toggling with your thumbs or a motion controller, you were still viewing out of a one-dimensional camera which pointed in a certain direction, or viewing line of sight. The reason the Antigravity A1 is so unique is because you are also piloting and viewing from the 360 camera into your goggles. And not only are you now seeing 360 vision, you can now turn your head and see wherever you want to while you're flying. This is not something that existed before this drone. With my current FPV setups that I use for jobs and whatnot, I am flying through the single lens of a camera. And when I'm wearing my goggles, I am seeing singularly out of this camera. That means anything else that the camera is not pointed at, I cannot see. That is my blind spot. In order to see it, I either have to turn my drone to see it, which will change the framing and ultimately the final picture, or take my goggles off and look at it line of sight, which is not favored, especially when you're in manual or acro mode. The beautiful thing about the Antigravity A1's flying characteristics is now, if I'm ever curious about a blind spot behind me, I can look behind me. I can turn my head and see if there's a wall or a building behind me. Because of how different it is, flying it is quite a different experience than what I've been used to. It took me a while to get used to, but the default mode that the Antigravity A1 flies in is what they call free motion mode. The way this works is when you have the goggles on. When you're turning your head, you're not actually changing the direction of the drone. What changes the direction of the drone is where you point the controller. And just like in a VR software, where you're pointing this motion controller is shown on the screen of your goggles. They are both tethered and are communicating with each other. And so if I was flying the drone right now, if I wanted to fly in one direction, I'd point in that direction. Even if I'm not looking in that direction, I will start flying that way. The cool thing that they've built into the software of this drone is, as you can see, I'm looking in one direction. I'm looking straight ahead. If I point my controller in a different direction, a mini screen pops up that shows the crosshairs of the center of where I'm pointing that controller. So in theory, while I'm flying, I can point the controller in one direction, viewfinder out of this mini screen, and still fly and make sure that whatever I'm framing on the side or behind me or to my left or right is still in frame while still flying and making sure I'm not flying into anything. I do wish there was a way to make the screen a little bigger. It is kind of small. It's like a eighth, if not a little bit smaller, the size of the total screen. But that being said, this screen is by far the biggest I've seen on any FPV goggles I've used so far. I would say it's probably almost 40% bigger than the Goggles 3, which are DJI's latest goggles release. Oh wait, I have to show one more feature to you guys. This is actually really funny. So if I hit the quick menu, there's this feature that says open cockpit mode. I didn't know what that was. I don't know if that was on the demo unit. Like I said, everything was in Chinese. I do this, it makes me switch to FPV mode. I'll explain that later, but Do you guys see this? What the fuck? I don't know why this is a thing, but I think it's hilarious. I'm on top of a dragon, so if I were to fly this while I was just flying around with the anti-gravity outside, I'd be riding a dragon. I don't know why they include this. This feels like the most random thing to include on a drone, but I think it's funny. And especially if they change the designs of like what you can be riding. It goes without saying, anti-gravity, they were not just thinking about the final content product you can get showing to people on a phone. I think they really had the users in mind when they built this and how much of a different immersive experience it would be to fly a drone. Because this really takes things to the next level, truly. While we're on the topic, this drone technically is not really considered an FPV drone because it doesn't have the capabilities of flying in acro mode, doing crazy flips and tricks like an FPV drone would have. However, there is a thing that they built into anti-gravity called FPV mode. I know the other DJI drones have it as well. I'm in free motion mode right now, which is the typical way that the drone is flown, which is where it goes in the direction you point. However, the downside of this motion is it becomes a full body activity. When you're flying in free motion mode, because the drone moves wherever you point the remote, sometimes you want to fly behind you, sometimes you want to turn around to adjust your body so you're not like at this weird angle. So I notice when I'm flying in free motion, I'm turning around in circles a lot. But if you don't want to have to do that and you want to be able to be more stationary, they have this thing called FPV mode. So as opposed to free motion mode, you're no longer pointing in a direction that you want to fly. Now when you hold down the trigger, the drone's gonna fly forward, and as opposed to going in a direction you're pointing the controller, it becomes more of a joystick. So if you rotate to the left, it's gonna start swerving left. If you rotate to the right, it's gonna start swerving right. If you rotate upward, it'll go up. If you rotate down, it'll go down. This proves to be a much more stationary experience. So if you're on a car, for example, and you're moving and you can't really necessarily be locked down in one solid ground, then FPV mode might be a better choice for you. The average flight time in my experience I've gotten with this drone has been about 25 to 30 minutes. Top speeds have hit more around 30, almost 40 miles per hour. I don't usually need to go that fast. That would be in sport mode. Actually, yeah, someone did mention that in my last video. They saw how I was using free motion mode and I had to keep turning my body in circles, and it looked so funny while I was trying to operate this drone and making me dizzy. This could have been avoided if I either used FPV mode or if I used Antigravity's Sky Genie effect, which basically allows you to use pre-programmed shots in the drone. You select your subject, you can then select the distance you want it to maintain, you can select the speed, hit start, and then it will just do the movement for you. There's a couple other features built into that I'll still continue to test as this video is being developed. There's also zoom out, there is an arc orbit out, and then there is a couple other things that the drone can do pre-programmed so you don't have to touch a single button. There's also the classic subject tracking where you can select the subject by pinning a square over it. Antigravity will use software to register that subject, and the drone will follow you wherever you go. So this means as well that you could just pin this drone onto somebody to yourself and let it fly itself almost like a hover air self-following drone, which is another really cool feature that the Antigravity has built into it. Now, I know two big things that people were asking about in the last video I posted were, are we gonna have a alternative flight mode for this? Because I know not everybody likes the motion controller. I personally don't use this when I'm working on my jobs. I think that I get a lot more precision with a classic controller that has two sticks. However, we don't have that right now with the Antigravity A1, but they have said that they are developing one. So the day that comes out, I can't wait to see how that changes how I can actually fly this thing and what I can unlock. It's good to hear that it's in development though. Second thing is I typically like to fly cine whoops for my jobs because I like flying around people, I like flying indoors, and I like flying close proximity. So being able to have a drone that has prop guards is always really important to me. Antigravity A1, obviously, as you can see, stock does not have prop guards. However, they have also mentioned they're developing prop guards for the Antigravity A1 coming soon, which is great to hear. The Antigravity A1 camera shoots in 8K. That is the maximum resolution you can shoot at, and it can shoot at 8K at 24, 25, or 30 frames per second. If you want to shoot in 50 or 60 frames per second for slow motion or faster frame rate footage, you could shoot in 5.2K. There was one thing I was hoping would be on the Antigravity, which unfortunately isn't, which is log. There's no log on the Antigravity. However, you can shoot and you can adjust the color profile to bring the saturation, contrast, and sharpness down, and you'll have a little bit more dynamic range to work with in post. But I will say, one of the reasons you would want a log profile is to have more dynamic range on your image. So far in my experience, the dynamic range that the Antigravity A1 has when I shoot in harsh sunlight and I see the shadows and the sun has been great. I haven't really lost a lot of exposure or quality, even when the dynamic range of the shot requires a high level. Now, I don't personally use 360 cameras as much, so working with this has been a learning experience for me. And it honestly is crazy how many possibilities open up when you're flying a drone and you don't have to always nail the perfect framing. You can fly the drone, and if you want to adjust the framing later, you can always do that in post. Antigravity has been making this as easy as possible to do this. They've released an Antigravity Studio, which is pretty similar to the Insta360 Studio, but tuned more for the drone itself. And it's been a good experience so far. One of my favorite things that they've updated is not even within the Antigravity app, but they've now created a new little function that you can download into your Mac and preview the 360 footage without opening up Antigravity Studio. This sounds like a small thing, but it's actually really, really nice because when I get home and I want to preview my footage, I don't like having to throw it into a whole nother software, wait for it to boot up, render, and then play within the software. It just feels like more friction. Now I can scroll through the files directly on Finder, hit spacebar, and I can now preview the video while scrolling around and looking in the footage, all within the comfort of not even having the software open. This is big for me. This actually increases the likelihood of me using a clip by like 25, 30, 50%. I will say when it gets darker, if you have the Antigravity A1 on auto mode, it begins to bring the shutter speed down. And when you bring the shutter speed down on a drone that is 360, that needs things like flow state stabilization to stabilize the footage, the low shutter speed is making those jitters and changes obvious. One person did ask, and I was also curious as well, about if the Antigravity A1 was going to have a very important thing in my drone arsenal, which is ND filters. They are essentially these little sunglasses you put on the lenses of your cameras. They darken the exposure, but that also lets you crank down the shutter speed to be more quote-unquote cinematic. That's why I love putting my ND filters on all my drones so that that motion blur is there. Unfortunately, ND filters do not exist yet for the Antigravity A1. However, Antigravity and Insta360 in their camera software have inputted this function called Motion ND, and it uses AI to actually take the sharp image that is no shutter speed, very crisp, and create motion blur artificially in post. And it looks really, really good in my opinion. This has completely gotten rid of the need to use ND filters for a lot of these cases. Going back to low light and flying this drone in low light and at night. Because of 360 cameras, low light isn't the absolute best. However, I am happy to report that I was able to successfully fly the Antigravity even in the dark and at night. The drone still performs really well at night. And if you need to fly it at night, then you absolutely can. It's very, very visible with its fill lights and anti-collision sensors all around it, including this auxiliary light you can turn on and off at the bottom. So what are my overall thoughts on how the Antigravity A1 has updated since I last used it? I want to preface this by saying when I was first sent around the world with this drone, they provided me with not one, but 3 anti-gravity units just in case something happened. However, I made it across the entire world without a single bad crash. And I was able to get pretty much all the shots I needed to on one single unit. No matter where I was, whether it was China, Bali, Turkey, Azores, back in the States, the drone flew great, and it did pretty much 90% of what I wanted it to. I feel the same way, if not a little bit better, about the Antigravity A1 now. Now that they've been running many tests and improvements on the drone itself, I feel it's fluid, controls do what I want them to, and I, as a pilot, feel like the bottleneck. I feel like I can get better. And I think that's actually really exciting because it shows just how much of a leap forward this drone is for how technology can advance. That being said, I do want a classic controller and I can't wait to see what I can do with it. But for now, this has done the job. And I've been able to do pretty much everything I need to on this so far. One thing I did remember I wanted on the improvements, which didn't happen unfortunately, was to be able to fly backwards in case I got a little too close to something. They didn't put that into the final version. However, I realized that this can also be easily solved by me just kind of flicking the drone controller backwards and pushing in the opposite direction. I guess they felt like it could be worked around, it didn't need to be changed. Transmission. I remember when I was testing the Antigravity A1 in the pre-production unit, it had multiple random failures, like the drone goggles would just freeze and I would be like left with nothing until I restarted the goggles, and that took a while. That hasn't happened in my multiple tests around Los Angeles. And I've been flying in all kinds of different areas, high traffic areas, low traffic areas, and the only time I've had really bad reception and interface issues was when I flew directly behind a building, and there was a building literally between me and the drone. This is something that would happen to essentially any drone, so I don't blame it for having that issue. And even when I did have transmission issues, the anti-gravity stayed completely put, right parked where I left it, so thankfully that hasn't been an issue as well. Another person was asking in my last video if you connect the drone and goggles to the phone, and yeah, you can connect it to the phone. There's going to be an app. It will give you locations. This is also what you can use to update your software, so you don't need a computer. And after your flights, you can also quick transfer your footage to your apps and edit your 360 videos inside the Antigravity app, just like the Insta360 app. Now the big question, how much is this flying 360 8K camera gonna cost? I wish I could tell you exactly, they haven't given me the price yet, but based off of internet speculation, I would imagine this will be around the ballpark, most likely a little bit more than the DJI Mini 5 Pro. The anti-gravity team also let me know that the quality and function of the head tracking goggles are one of the major factors for the listed price. This drone feels like they have the same precision and technology built into that of a DJI Mini drone, with extra new features that we haven't yet seen on the market. So I would imagine this being whatever the price of the Mini 5 Pro is right now, a little bit higher than that. I think one thing that's important to address, being a citizen of the US, and with all the news and information that's going on about the Chinese and DJI drones being banned, you're gonna be happy to hear, if you live in the US, that the Antigravity A1 is going to be on sale in the States. And that at least makes me happy, because as someone who lives in the States and uses drones for their living, knowing that there is a company out there that's still making great stuff and that this is only the beginning, it gives me hope that innovation will continue to blossom no matter what people down in the courts think. After having gone to use this drone globally, and also again in my own backyard in LA with the final release looming, what do I think about the Antigravity A1 and who exactly do I think this is going to be for? I will say, this drone doesn't feel like a direct competitor to the kinds of drones that we've been using in the past. This genuinely feels like they are carving their own path for a whole new level of flight and a whole new sense of immersion. In my opinion, the actual camera quality on this drone, it's important. It's a huge part of the equation, especially for people looking to make content with this. However, for people who just want to experience flight and make it accessible and democratized in the most immersive form possible, this feels like the first big step in a long time. As someone who's been flying FPV for over 5, almost 6 years now, and has gotten to feel that immersion of flight through what technology has been able to present with us, this is a whole new level. Being able to see 360, to be able to turn my head, to look up, down, behind, and to my left and right, and see everything without having the drone be in a specific position, and just be able to float there in space with this high fidelity quality coming from this 8K camera. It's unlike anything else. I will tell you that the memories I have from my trip in all these different places, they hit so much differently than I don't think they ever would have if I didn't have this drone, this piece of technology. I think that this drone will not only be used and is valuable for what it can capture with its 8K and 360 camera qualities, but just for the experience itself. And I urge you, even if you don't want to go out there and pull the trigger, to go try to just fly one and feel how it feels. It's truly amazing. And I'm really happy that tools like these are continuing to blossom and emerge. So I'm gonna keep experimenting with this thing, seeing what is possible, because this is just the beginning. And on top of that, I'm gonna have a good time doing it, because flying around in this thing is unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I hope you get the chance to do it too. If you do want to learn more about the Antigravity A1, there is a link in my bio. To click it, it'll give you all the extra information you need. Go ahead and watch other videos out there too. But bottom line, you've got to try this thing. This has been Kai. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.